Good morning, guys, and welcome back to our video tutorial. And today we're gonna talk about chapter 4. And like I said, semester 1 is more of a theory than practical. So I hope you guys are doing your basic configuration. So you have to keep doing that. Don't just say, okay, I am able to configure this switch with basic configuration, and that's all. You guys have to keep doing that, and because we're gonna have to come back to it again. So our today's chapter is about network access, and today we're going to talk about the cabling types, the UTP cables, the media types like the fiber optic, wireless, and copper cables. Today we're going to talk about the straight through, the crossover, and we're going to talk about all options of fiber optic connectivities. And it's today that we're going to talk about the two layers, the first two layers of the OSI model, that is the physical layer and the data link layer. So in our subsequent chapters, like tomorrow, we're going to be talking about the network layer, and that will connect us to some IP addressing, both version 4 and version 6 IP address. So for today, we're just going to talk about the network access, which we'll talk about the physical layer and the data link layer. So like I said, the layer numbers also matters, where they will say layer 1, layer 2. So I made mention of that in your previous video. So it's important that you also take your book and paper, your paper and pen, and start jotting down some of the things that you may find interesting from this video. And also I'll advise you guys to be reading and make some research. Also, if you have any questions, you ask me, and I'll be at your service to help you answer those questions. Alright guys, so network access is our chapter today, and what we expect to cover as objectives of this chapter is we talk about the physical layer protocols and the services, and describe the purpose and functions of the physical layer. Then from there we'll go to talk about the network media, that is the network layer. We're going to talk about still about the physical layer. We're going to talk about the media, the different types of media, but basically we're going to base on this building a UTP cable. So we have a practical on this one, but I will say when we meet here on site, we're going to do this practical, because I'm not sure you guys have the tools at home, so the practical will come later on when we meet here. Okay guys, so we don't mind about that practical. We will gonna do it as soon as we converge right here. Then from there we move to the data link layer. We're going to talk about the data link layer and explain the role of the data link layer and describe the functions or the purpose of the data link layer. And from there we talk about the media access control, which is also a sub layer of the data link layer, because the data link layer is the only layer of the OSI layer that or amongst the OSI layers that is subdivided into two sub layers, that is the LLC and the MAC sub layer. So we're going to talk about the MAC sub layer right here, the media access control, and then from there we're going to talk about the media access control itself, where we talk about the different types of topologies, and from there we talk about the different types of network connectivities, media access control, the media sharing and control based networks. We talk about bandwidth and so on and so forth. So today we're going to talk about all of those things. So we go into the chapter. The physical control is that we're going to talk about the cable type connections. So before network communication can occur, you need to have physical connectivity between your devices so that they can communicate and then they can talk. So all start from the physical layer. You don't just come and then you start sending email. Everything starts from the physical layer. So that's why it is called layer 1. You have to come and connect to the network. Either you connect to the wireless media, or you connect fiber optic, or you connect Ethernet, which is copper. So you have to have physical connectivity. Alright, so the interface card, that is the NIC card. The NIC is very, very important. It is a physical component of the computer that allows devices to connect to the network. If your device NIC right here, where you take your RJ45 and connect to the outside of your computer right there at the RJ45 connector right there into the IFJ45 female connection on your computer, you will not have. If you have this and the drivers are not installed on your computer, you still will not have access. So the NIC is very important. In order for you to be able to verify your NIC information, you have to type the command, or you have to ping your NIC using the test or the loopback IP address of 127.0.0.1. And if you have a ping reply from your computer, it means your NIC is running functional fine. So I may just provide some video also how to verify if our NIC is fine or not. So if your device does not have a NIC, it will not connect to the internet. There are two ways that a device will have a NIC. It will be through wireless or wired. So you may have you may have Ethernet 1, Ethernet 2, Ethernet 3. Some computers would even have up to 8 NICs. Okay, so it doesn't matter. Some computers will have only 1 NIC, some will have two physical and 2 wireless. So it depends. Some will have up to 8 NICs, provided that their computers are running on virtual connectivity. So you may see all of those things in your network or on some of your computers. So the physical layer's main function is to make sure that it transmits those data frames into bits to travel across the media. So what it does is that it provides means to transport those bits that make up the data link layer frame across the network media. So another function of the physical layer is that it accepts a complete frame from the data link layer and then make sure that it turns this data into a format that the recipient will understand. That means it's going to encode the series of signals that are transmitted onto the local media, and those encode bits will comprise a frame, and those frames will be received either by an end device or by an intermediary device, example a router or a switch. So the 3 basic forms of network media we talk about is the electrical signals. We use copper cable, and we have light poles that fiber optic use to transmit data, and microwaves that wireless uses. So each of these network medias have a way that they forward these bits. So copper uses electrical signals, so you use electricity. That's why your copper cables have 8 wires inside, which we're going to talk about, 4 of which will transmit data and the other 4 will transmit those data in form of light, so the electricity. So that's exactly what it is all about. So we move to the next slide. So these are organizations that are responsible for controlling the physical layer, and what they do is that they implement hardware and govern how these hardwares function, and those organizations are right here. And these organizations, you can join them, like I said in my previous video. It's free, and you can just give your take and take your take from that. So the functions of the physical layer and some of the characteristics of the physical layer is that it does encode data, which is more like the function of the presentation layer. What it does is that it converts the stream of data bit in predefined code. If you don't understand, that means you speak in a language that your recipient, the next person listening to you, can understand. That is, you encode. So the signaling method of the physical layer is the method of representing the bit, and the physical layer standards must define what type of signal, whether a 0 represents what and what a 1 represents what. So they have to have those predefined structures so that the recipient will understand. So the transmission occurs at the middle of each bit period, and the modulation in the process by which the characteristic of the one wave, that is a signal, modify another wave there, that is the carrier. So it is important. Now the next thing is that some of the another physical layer characteristic is that we're going to talk about bandwidth. What is bandwidth? Bandwidth is the capacity of the medium to carry data. That is the maximum capacity. That is, for instance, we go take from Westfield right here. I am at Kairaba Avenue at Quantum Net Building. So if I am going towards Westfield, that main road, I have a capacity of 2 cars. That is my maximum. That is my bandwidth. Okay? Or let's say, for instance, I have my car that can drive at 240 miles per second or kilometers per second. Or per hour, sorry. 240 kilometers per hour. So that is my maximum bandwidth for my car. And for example, I use the street right here. My maximum bandwidth is 2 cars, so which means my maximum is 2. So the digital bandwidth measures the amount of data that can flow from one place to another in a given amount of time. So you can just take bandwidth as defined that way. So the bandwidth is sometimes thought as a speed that bits travel. However, this is not accurate. What is accurate is that it measures the amount that those bits, the number of data that can be able to flow through a particular medium within 1 second. That's why you see bits per second, kilometers per second, bit per second. So it's just talking about per second. So it's measured how much of the data is able to travel, your maximum data that is able to travel. So this is what you have, and the units in bandwidth, you have kilobits per second that is seen as bits per second, we see BS, kilobits per second, KBS, and we have MBS, and we have GBS and TBS. So they're all written in that way. The abbreviations are right there, and the units are mentioned that way. So throughput, we have another one terminology, another characteristic of the physical layer is throughput. The throughput is how much in exact format is transmitted. Let's say for instance my total bandwidth at this road is 2 cars, but at this moment it's only 1 car that is riding through this road. That is my throughput. Okay guys, so it's important that we know what is that. Let's say for instance, like I said, my car is able to drive at a speed of 240 kilometers per hour. At this moment I am driving at 80 kilometers per hour. That 80 kilometers per hour for which I am using right now to drive is my throughput. So it is very important that you understand it's the amount of traffic, that type of traffic, and also the usually does not match the specified bandwidth in the physical layer implementation due to the many factors. One, the amount of traffic, which sometimes your throughput might be less or it might be high. Let's say for instance if I'm driving at a very congested area, I may not drive at more than 10 kilometers per hour or 20 kilometers per hour. So but if I am at a free traffic, let's say for instance I'm going to the village and the traffic is very free, that I have few cars on the way, I can drive at 120, 160 at a within 1 hour. So latency that is created by network device encountered between source and destination can all be the factors in which the throughput is determined. And then we have the good put, the throughput minus the traffic overhead for establishing SSM acknowledgement and encapsulation. So these are what we have. So the figures here shows the different types of interface. So you have a router and it has interfaces and it has ports, and then it also has so the difference between interface and port is that interfaces are configurable with a network layer address, that is layer 3 address, or you can call it logical address, or you can call it IP address. So IP address has all those names. Okay, so it is important. Now let's go to the network media. The characteristic of the copper is that it transmitted on copper cables as electrical poles. And then we have one thing that is the difficulty about or some of the demerits about copper cable is that it is susceptible to attenuation, and attenuation is fluctuation in the network.